Hey rockers, thanks for coming back to check out another true tale. I hope you will please take the time to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment at the end if you like, and give it a thumbs up or a like if you like it. Today we're going back to July 31st, 1982 to Springfield, Illinois, to the Prairie Capital Convention Center. Yet online, it also says the Bank of Springfield Center. So maybe it was called that before it was called Prairie Capital, or maybe that's what it's called now. I don't know. But either way, in Springfield, Illinois on July 31st, 1982, it was one hell of a concert. The bill featured 4 bands, man. 4. The Scorpions, Iron Maiden, Rainbow, and Girlschool. All bands that I'm a big fan of. And this was an exciting night for me, man. I was about 16, 17 years old. I think 16, actually. And we actually got a ride there from someone that you know, had a license. But we were all about 16, 17. 4 of us went to the show. For the life of me, I can't remember who I went with to this show, but man, Springfield, Illinois was only about an hour and a half away from Peoria, Illinois, where I resided for many years. And to get to this show was a buzz, literally, because we were ingesting certain things, and I'll just shut up about that. If you've seen my videos, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, one guy says he's going to pray for my brain cells. Well, it's too late. No, anyway, man, we got there. Place was packed. The first band that hit the stage that night was Girlschool from Britain. Of course, Girlschool was formed in 1978, and they are the longest running all-female rock and roll band in the world, if you didn't know that. They were actually on the tour for their Screaming Blue Murder album on this tour, which was the Scorpions' Blackout tour. And of course, the Scorpions were headlining. Some of the songs that the Girlschool girls did that night, I almost said the Girlschool guys, they did Screaming Blue Murder, which was the title of the third album, featuring bassist Gil Weston's first appearance. Also, of course, Kim McAuliffe was there on vocals and rhythm guitar. Kelly Johnson, rest in peace, was still there on lead guitar. Denise Dufert on drums. Of course, Kim and Denise are still with Girlschool today. And you can find my interview with Girlschool guitar player Jackie Chambers on my other channel, The Church of Rock. It's all one word, The Church of Rock, Jackie Chambers interview. So this night, man, we wanted to get kind of close. Well, let's face it, I was 16, 17 years old, 16, and the girls in Girlschool were kind of hot. Especially Kelly Johnson and Kim. Why do I have a hard time pronouncing her last name? I always have. McAuliffe. So Kim and Kelly, we'll say, were pretty hot to us, or to me. And being a teenage boy, I wanted to get as close to that as I could because there was not really many chicks in metal. And it was a cool thing. We welcomed it, you know, and they rocked. Really rocked. I remember hearing them do their stuff with Motorhead on that St. Valentine's Day Massacre record that Motorhead and Girlschool did. 999 Emergency. And of course, God, they did so many good songs. That night they did Screaming Blue Murder, The Hunter, Race with the Devil. They did Nothing to Lose, which is awesome. Hit and Run. Great track, and I think it's the name of one of their albums, right? I don't have all the Girlschool albums, so let me know if you're a Girlschool fan. Hit and Run, I believe that's an album, right? And so they did Hit and Run, which I love that song. Live With Me and Take It All Away. Girlschool rocked. I mean, they were super cool. They were not much older than we were, not much. And they were all decked out in their leather, and they were like the real deal. Like hard rock / metal, first wave of British, you know, new wave of heavy metal. Girlschool absolutely rules, and I still to this day am a big fan. And I'm pissed at myself for not seeing them in Portland recently on the very last ever USA tour. I officially suck. So, after Girlschool played, Rainbow. Now, if I'm wrong and Maiden played second, okay. That's one of those blurry moments that I'm going to be transparent about. It was 42 years ago. But Rainbow, elegant band with the most awesome Richie Blackmore on guitar. He's known as a super moody guy, a super hard to get along with guy, a very independent guy, shall we say. But in my book, he is one of the most talented. I love him, and I know some people out there are going to say, yeah, I love Blackmore, and I'm going to get some people saying, not a fan. But I gotta say, I just am. I love the early stuff from Deep Purple, and I love all the Rainbow material. And I was able to see Rainbow several times. Of course, their most famous incarnation was with Ronnie James Dio, but they also had, Graham Bonnet on vocals. I got to see them with him once. This show featured the great Joe Lynn Turner, and this was the Rainbow Straight Between the Eyes tour. Remember that video on MTV, Stone Cold, that they played over and over and over? Well, they did that at the show, and it was great. Joe Lynn Turner on vocals, Richie Blackmore on guitar, Roger Glover on the bass, and of course David Rosenthal on keys, and the great Bobby Rondinelli on drums. It was a killer show, man. They did a good set that night. Spotlight Kid. Then they did Mistreated. I Surrender, which is a Head East cover. They did Can't Happen Here, Tearing Out My Heart. And at one point, man, I noticed Richie Blackmore, of course, was playing his famous white Fender Stratocaster, I believe. And at one point, they did a little intro to one of the songs. And it was a couple of minutes long, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It was so cool. It was him and the keyboard player going back and forth. Him and David Rosenthal, just like two wizards. It was almost like Led Zeppelin used to do with Jimmy Page and Robert Plant with that guitar response vocal thing back and forth. It was keys and guitar, and man, was Richie Blackmore awesome that night, man. Really awesome. By the way, if you like Deep Purple, I've got a story about Deep Purple on this channel. If you just go to the video section and check out my Deep Purple story. After they did Tearing Out My Heart, Can't Happen Here, they did All Night Long. And then, of course, the big MTV hit Stone Cold. And again, keyboard wizard David Rosenthal broke into this really long solo that was very Deep Purple-esque, very John Lordish, and it was cool. And then it led right into them breaking into Stone Cold, which sounded exactly like the album. Yeah, man, those guys were good. Joe Lynn Turner, very underrated singer. Richie Blackmore did not let us down. He was great. He had a lot of good moves on stage, too. I was really focused on him, being a big fan of Deep Purple from the old days. Power is another song they did. Difficult to Cure. And then they did a legendary Long Live Rock and Roll. And, of course, during this show, they did Smoke on the Water. We couldn't believe it when Richie Blackmore broke into dun, 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 dun. It was killer. He got down on his knees and he had one of his legs out on the stage and he was really playing to the crowd. And he played it a little different than he did with Deep Purple on purpose. And there was some really cool, interesting stuff thrown in that performance. I was really into it, man. My eyes were glued to that man. So Rainbow really did kill it, man. The next up was Iron Maiden. Man, who doesn't love Maiden, right? Iron Maiden, of course, forming in 1975 by bass player Steve Harris. And he's the primary songwriter as well. And they have some of the best lyrics in rock and roll. You gotta love Maiden. They've created a whole nother world, man. And this was the tour that they were doing for the Beast on the Road. It's called the Beast on the Road Tour. And Bruce Dickinson on vocals, of course, Steve Harris on bass, Dave Murray on guitar, the great Adrian Smith on guitar, and this was the last tour that Clive Burr was on. Great drummer, of course, that was on the first few albums, and then he had to leave the band, I guess, for personal reasons or something. I guess when I did my research, it said reliability issues. It could be anything. But I know when he passed away in 2013, the guys issued a nice statement about him, or Steve Harris did, so long live the memory of Clive Burr. The guys did a short set, but was it killer? It sure was. And that's the name of their second album. And they did the song Rothschild, which I believe is on the second album. Maybe it's on the first. Then they did Run to the Hills from The Number of the Beast. Of course, they did Children of the Damned. They did The Number of the Beast, which is great, with that great Vincent Price intro. They had a big banner of Eddie behind the band. Steve Harris was up front a lot because he's like the lead player, even though there's, 3 guitar players nowadays. Back then there was 2. He was the guy that was up front the most. Bruce did a lot of theatrics, and his vocals were just killer. Bruce Dickinson, man, super operatic, really beautiful singer. I mean, he was hitting every note. There was smoke on stage. It was just a really good show. After Number of the Beast, they did 22 Acacia Avenue from Number of the Beast, followed by the epic Hallowed Be Thy Name. That song gives me the goosebumps, and I was super close to the stage when those guys played that. We were wandering around this venue. I'd lost my friends, and I was just kind of by myself checking out the bands and trying to get as close as I could. I got closer when the Scorpions got on, by the way. But it was really cool. They went into the song Iron Maiden, title track from the very first Iron Maiden album with the great late Paul Di'Anno doing the original vocals, but Bruce did a great version. And then they did Drifter, which is another one from the old days. And you know, Iron Maiden, man, I've seen them about 8 times, 6, 7, 8 times, probably 8. And they've never not just completely been awesome. I haven't seen them since 2009, however, and I wish I could have seen them on this recent tour. I know my friend Deacon Floyd, a.k.a. Pinky, he saw them. He said they were killer. And I'll take his word for it because, well, he's an awesome dude and my bro. Last up, the legendary Scorpions, man. This was the Blackout tour. Or at least one of them. If not, I think they did another leg or two. I'm not sure. These guys were formed in Germany in 1965, you guys. Yep, that is when Rudolf Schenker, rhythm and lead guitarist and acoustic guitarist, just a legend, he started the band. And of course, it went through many incarnations. They started out as kind of a mercy beat, like early British sound kind of band, and then morphed into harder rock until they developed into the Scorpions we know and love today. On that tour, Klaus Meine was on vocals. Got a great story about Klaus after this story's over. Rudolf Schenker was on guitar. Matthias, I looked it up, man. I saw him pronounce his own name. Matthias Jabs on lead guitar. What a legend. And then, of course, Francis Buchholz on bass. I'm probably butchering his name. And, of course, the incredible Herman Rarebell on drums. Legendary drummer, by the way. These guys, they were killer. I was up to almost to the front of the stage. I was literally maybe second row. There was people all flocking to the front of the stage. It was back in the days where they weren't so strict about people being in their seats, and you could still stand up on your seat, and you know, you could still smoke you know what at the concerts, and no one really gave you a hard time. But everybody rushed to the front when the Scorps were on, and they were awesome, like dynamic. They sounded just like the albums. I was super tripping. I was tripping. Yeah, I won't lie. I was tripping heavily, and I was sitting there transfixed, and I was on stage right, and I was almost leaning up against the stage. There was like one other person in front of me, and I remember being transfixed watching the Scorpions because that Blackout album is so good, and they performed it, and it sounded just like the album. And I guarantee they weren't using any voice tracks or, you know, laptops or stuff like that, files. They were just playing rock and roll live, and it was great. Blackout was the first song of the night. Absolutely killer. Back then, I could really relate to the song Blackout because it was about drinking and blacking out, and, you know, realize I missed a day. I'm too wrecked to care anyway. I used to kind of live that way, so yeah, that song meant a lot to me. Then they went into Don't Make No Promises Your Body Can't Keep, into Loving You, and then they went into Make It Real, and then a classic Scorpion song, Love Drive, which is probably my favorite, up there with The Zoo by the Scorpions. Coast to Coast was the next song they played, and this is the actual set list from that night. Animal Magnetism, that was great. Klaus is a great frontman and just an incredible singer with a dynamic range. The whole band is just stellar. Like, they're like a walking studio, like an album live. It's crazy. They did Always Somewhere, and then they went into No One Like You. And that music video that got played quite a bit back in the day, where you see Rudolf Schenker wearing the gauze on his head, the gauze bandages, and the forks on his eyes, like on the cover of the album. Well, it turns out that that wasn't him on the cover of the album, which I thought it was. That was actually Gottfried Heinwein, a German artist, and that was a self-portrait of Gottfried Heinwein. But Rudolf Schenker resembled him with his mustache, so when he came out on stage, he came sliding out right before that song started on his knees, and it was like, and he started No One Like You, and he's on his knees with these forks on his eyes and the gauze around his head, and he was just playing up to the crowd, and there was smoke everywhere. It was just incredible. I was like, no way. It was super theatrical and awesome, man. After No One Like You, they did Can't Live Without You, which is arguably one of the coolest songs on the Blackout album. I love that one a lot. and When the Smoke is Going Down, and Arizona, and China White. Yeah, great album, man. Another Piece of Meat was up next on the Scorpions list. Then another great one from Blackout, a tune called Dynamite. That's a great tune, man. Real pounding, heavy, just lots of really intense high vocals from Klaus Meine. The Zoo was up next. It is one of the coolest songs ever. And if you've never heard the Scorpions play a song called The Zoo, please go to YouTube and check it out after this video. It's so awesome. Can't Get Enough was the last song they did that night. It was an incredible stage show. When they were done playing, I got it in my head that I wanted to somehow try to meet Klaus Meine. So I went outside, I found the bus, I found the tour bus, and I couldn't believe it, man. Within minutes, not even minutes, just within a couple of minutes maybe, I was out there by myself. I don't know what was going on, but there was nobody out there, and here I am 2 feet from the door of the tour bus. Here comes Klaus Meine walking out of the building by himself from God knows where. And I'm like, Klaus, what's up, man? Can I get a picture with you? And he's like, no. And I'm just like, why? And he just shakes his head no and gets on his tour bus and shuts the door. And I'm just kind of like, what the hell? It's just me and you, dude. It was weird because I've always heard he was a nice guy. Maybe it's because I was sweating profusely and my eyes were like this big, like the black part of my eyes were like black basketballs because of you know what. But that was a killer show, man. And every one of those bands was absolutely a 10. Yep, a rare show where I had walked away thinking, I can't take any more rock and roll, man. I'm not worthy. Yeah, it was incredible. It really was. And I thought there was something else I wanted to tell you guys related to my other channel, The Church of Rock, but I can't remember. Anyway, please subscribe to this channel if you would. I'd appreciate that. And you can hit me up if you want to. My email is always in the description area. Thanks so much for watching this true story. It wasn't super exciting in my opinion, but I know a lot of you historians out there really dig hearing about the past and some of these songs these guys were playing. And every one of these bands that I talked about was in top form back in the day, 1982. These guys sounded just like the records, and I'm super glad to have gotten the opportunity to witness those bands. And I'll be back soon with some more for you. Punk rock, rock and roll, and metal. Right here at Bloody F Mess Official. Why in the hell do I keep looking down here? There's like a green dot on my screen I'm supposed to look at to make it look like I'm looking at you. But sometimes I freak out and look at other stuff on the screen like I'm looking at my own swag back there, man. Cheers, guys.